Good afternoon, everyone. Considering the time constraints, I suggest to start immediately. Unfortunately, this is my last session I'm moderating. I'm going to give then the moderator role to Marco Marzano. Let's start with our third panel on exploring the frontiers of data and innovative artificial intelligence governance needs in food security and nutrition. So what is this panel about? Across food system, data and artificial intelligence are quietly reshaping how decisions are made. But this transformation is uneven. While some actors are moving quickly, others risk left behind. As these tools become core infrastructure, they also become a form of power, shaping what is seen, measured, predicted, and ultimately actioned upon. So the question is, what decisions they shape and in whose interest? And how do we ensure they are governed in a way that is fair, transparent, and accountable? So the session will be articulated as before on two questions. I will first pose to our key speakers the first question. Please remain on time so we can move to our second questions and then open the floor to Q&A. So let me first of all introduce the panel. We have His Excellency Fredrick Matwang'a, Ambassador and Permanent Representative of the Republic of Kenya at FAO. Online, we have Dr. Máximo Torero, Chief Economist at FAO. We have Ms. Patti Naylor, Coordinator of CSIPM Data Working Group. Mr. Matias, co-founder and Chief Technical Officer of ucrop.it online. Ms. Jedidah Wambui Nderitu, Regional Coalitions to Farmer Markets, Nairobi. She's here with us in person. And last but not least, Jacob Van Etten, Principal Scientist and Director of Digital Inclusions at the Alliance of Biodiversity International and CIAT. So our first question for this afternoon's sessions is about data and AI are becoming core infrastructure for food system, shaping what is seen, what is measured, and what is acted upon. But this transformation is deeply uneven. Some actors are setting the rules, others are subject to them. How do we build governance frameworks that distribute that power more fairly? And what does fair governance of artificial intelligence in food system actually look like in practice? His Excellency Fredrick Matwang'a, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Moderator, and good afternoon to all the participants. My fellow panelists, I think it's a very great pleasure to be with you this afternoon, and on a topic that is very, very interesting to everybody, particularly the young ones like myself. I think I've been given a very long question, which I'll try to respond within the time required, but because this subject is very interesting, I'll ask the moderator to give me one more minute ahead. To respond, before I respond, I want to really say that there is no doubt that there is a lot of significant impact of digitalization on the transformation of food systems. From the AI-powered predictive systems to digital public infrastructure, these are promising infrastructures that really have an impact. These technologies provide promise a more sustainable and efficient future, particularly for our farming communities. But as the kiting question clearly has put it, this transformation is deeply uneven. Uneven in the sense that Some actors set the rules and others are subject to them. How do we work around this kind of environment that is deeply uneven? And with this, I'll try to respond to the first question, that what does fair governance of AI in food systems look like in practice? I'll try to respond by saying, first, fair governance starts with the fundamental rebalancing of power and practices within the food system or within the sector itself. Today, we see too many smallholder farmers, particularly women and those in marginal areas, remaining unaware of how their data is collected, is processed, and how it is monetized. Many small farmers, they don't know that people are making business using their data. They are data providers and not data owners. And in essence, they can be easily be referred to as subjects of algorithms and not architects of those algorithms. So, what does fair governance actually look like? And in this case, I would like to give around quickly 3 scenarios that are grounded on Kenya's experience. And first on these scenarios is the issue of data sovereignty and ownership. If we have to improve the governance of AI systems, farmers must have the right to control and benefit from the data they generate. For instance, Kenya's Agricultural Data Information and Digital Policy of March 2026 emphasizes that data sovereignty, privacy, safeguards, and secure information sharing is a guarantee for the people in the farming sector or whoever that is involved in this kind of a system. By establishing clear data ownership rights, smallholder farmers are protected while agricultural research is accelerated. Our Data Protection Act and the Office of the Data Protection Commissioners guidance notes on cross-border data transfers ensure that personal data of Kenyan farmers cannot leave the country freely without proper protections. This is not protectionism in itself, but it is empowerment, where we say the farmers need to know where their data is going and how it is used. The second example that I want to give is about centralized digital public infrastructure as a public good. Fair governance requires that data infrastructure serves all actors equitably. Kenya is institutionalizing the Kenya Agricultural Digital Information Center as the central national repository and coordination hub for our entire agricultural data ecosystem. Alongside the Kenya Agricultural Management Information System, we are standardizing agricultural data by integrating information from rural cooperatives, national research organizations such as KALRO, the Kenya Agriculture and Livestock Research Organization, and private enterprises. This creates a level playing field where smallholders have access to the same data insights as large agribusinesses. In our case, this is fundamental. The third illustration I want to give is inclusion in rulemaking. The rules of AI governance cannot be written in boardrooms alone. We are not only to talk about rules created in the Silicon Valley, somewhere in Brussels, or in some other boardrooms. They must be co-designed with the farmers, pastoralists, indigenous peoples whose livelihoods are at stake or are at the center of these activities. The Kenya's Artificial Intelligence Strategy 2025-2030 was developed through extensive consultations with both government, private sector, academia, civil society, international partners, and local communities. This is the model we hope and we think is one that can be replicated globally in the process of trying to democratize governance, data governance, or AI practices. Now, I have the second question, which I hope I'll go through very briefly, if you allow.
Can we do this later? Let's first address the first one, and then I'll give the floor back again. Thank you very much. Let's move on with our panelist, Máximo Torero. You should be online. The floor is yours. I don't see Máximo online, so let's continue with Ms. Patti Naylor. Please, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Yes, good afternoon, and thank you everyone for being here, and thank you to the CFS for bringing us this forum. We are at a critical moment in time. Our technological advances have a potential to create an equitable, just world and make the lives of millions of people better. However, the implementation of artificial intelligence, digitalization, and data-driven technologies in the context of our food system is taking place at a very quick pace with very little oversight or consideration of their true social and environmental costs. This is a time to question the role of these technologies in our food system rather than accepting them as inevitable. On my flight here to Rome from the United States, someone in front of me on the airplane was watching a movie. It was Jurassic Park. That was the one where scientists were able to bring back the dinosaur. It was fiction, of course, and the movie did not end well. But it reminded me that even though we have technologies or science to develop technologies, it doesn't always mean that we should. So I think this is especially true when it comes to biotechnology that is altering the basics of life itself. The CSIPM, Civil Society and Indigenous Peoples Mechanism, our position is clear. We firmly believe that we need strong and binding government frameworks governance frameworks with provisions for corporate accountability and for the dismantling of political and economic power structures of our current system. We need full assessment of digital technologies already in use and those emerging technologies. Is their use warranted, or are their risks too great? We need a halt or a moratorium, as mentioned earlier today, to new technological infrastructures until governance mechanisms are in place. And we need to support alternatives like agroecology and farmer-owned and farmer-led technologies that takes us beyond food security to food sovereignty and technology sovereignty. The first question here identifies one of the major risks of artificial intelligence, but it frames it in a way that misses a contradiction. By shaping what is seen, measured, and acted upon, artificial intelligence will be choosing and actually limiting the information we receive and influencing our decision-making abilities, whether those decisions are made by food producers, researchers, or policymakers. As a farmer, I can tell you that artificial intelligence cannot see and know the most important aspects of food production that a farmer can see, know, and understand. The knowledge of the land, the wind, the water flows, the plants, animals, and pollinators, as well as the pests, and in real time, as well as over seasons, over years, and over generations. The question also recognizes power imbalances. We should ask, do we have the political will to address the power structures that create these unfair conditions? If we are serious about ending hunger and food insecurity, we need to name and dismantle those power structures. I would like to point out that the forum's concept note references the strengthening collection and use of U.S. food FSN data policy recommendations. While those recommendations did have important aspects that need to be implemented, the CSIPM advocated for strong governance language in that document. But the final policy recommendations that were endorsed in 2023 contain weakened governance mechanisms as a result of the complex negotiation process. This forum is not a negotiation center. We are discussing things in a very coordinated effort, and I appreciate everyone's inputs today. But we do need to think of these policy recommendations, but not as a strong basis for our governance considerations. CSIPM also agrees that the earlier points today regarding the framing of this forum and using the term harnessing is not as relevant and impactful as it would have been if it had been governance of artificial intelligence, digitalization, and data collection. I'll finally end by saying governance needs to be binding. It needs to include not just artificial intelligence, but also all of the digitalization and data technologies. It should ensure a rights-based focus with accountability to social and environmental impacts. And it needs to include continuous reevaluation and reassessment of existing technologies, not just new ones. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pat. And let me give now the floor to Máximo. To Máximo Torero, you should be online. Máximo, the floor is yours, please.
Thank you very much, and thank you for this question. And as all of you know, and I hope you can hear me well. Can you hear me well?
Yes, very well, Máximo.
Yes, perfect. Okay. As all of you know, data establishes a foundation for evidence-based and decision-making, which can unlock many issues that are extremely important for agriculture, including precision agriculture, early warning systems for famine and disease supply chain optimization, climate change adaptation strategies, market intelligence, digital transformation of agri-food systems, and many other roles that data plays to basically bring light to decisions that we make. The prerequisites for this, however, are that data is reliable, and this is very important, that it has to be reliable and timely, and the data systems are trusted and accessible to users at all levels, including development partners, governors, national institutions, researchers, farmers, and other value chain actors, and especially smallholders. That equitability of the environment where we operate is central, and that's part of our role as FAO to try to bring as much as possible information to level the field, no matter the size and the location, geographical location where you are and the level of income you have. Artificial intelligence in this context can lower some barriers to accessing and interpreting these complex data ecosystems through queries made in natural language, which dramatically extend the potential reach of personalized and actionable data-driven insights. However, if the data is fragmented and the systems or platforms cannot process data and generate accurate and quality insights, the opportunities remain limited, and particularly to those without access to technology and or capacity to take advantage of digital capabilities. And this brings up the importance that artificial intelligence won't do it alone. The human and the human technical capabilities are essential to this part and are essential to use appropriately those technologies. Further, data is not neutral. It can inherit a societal prejudices, inequalities, and blind spots of the systems that generate. In the agri-food systems, this can affect which farmers, regions, crops, market, or risks are visible to artificial intelligence systems and which are underrepresented or overlooked. We are living through the construction of systems foundations of artificial intelligence-based agri-food technologies, including how these technologies collect, process, and share data. These make it critical to invest how in building consensus on how to govern them, including the role of open frameworks, open and shared digital infrastructure, and digital public goods. These frameworks reduce fragmentation, enable interoperability, which will be central, and prevent dependency on closed systems but are simultaneously subject to increasing pressures from the artificial intelligence actors. The fair, responsible, and inclusive governance of these systems require multilateral collaboration, including on establishing standards and principles that balance openness and data sovereignty. Openness and interoperability are crucial to ensure that data can be both accessed and used by those who need it and can flow between systems. Data sovereignty ensures that users, as data providers, are not disempowered and retain agency over their data, which is being used. The role of international and intergovernmental organizations is critical in addressing this globalized challenge, enabling information and guiding a conversation around shared standards, frameworks, and governance, whilst advocating for better and more equitable future for all. In practice, governance of data and artificial intelligence requires international cooperation to establish best practices, regulatory principles, and shared standards, plus investments in localized capacity, building and participatory co-creation to ensure these artificial intelligence solutions are adapted to local realities and deliver tangible impact. We need to understand that in many of these technology innovations, it will be very difficult to overall regulate those technologies. Because yes, we can have a great regulatory system in place, but if this cannot be enforceable, we won't be able to make it a success. The best way to overcome that challenge is to use and to provide services with artificial intelligence that are useful for the beneficiaries and that respects their rights. That usefulness will make it attractive over other agencies or other organizations from private sector trying to push to them some systems of artificial intelligence that won't comply with the principles I mentioned before. So I think it's really important to create a responsible data governance, but also extremely important that what we provide through artificial intelligence as public goods are the best possible quality, has all the conditions of universal accessibility, so that people can really benefit from it, and therefore they will be the ones using the appropriate artificial intelligence service delivery and not move to other options that could have many problems and could have exclusionary to them and could create also property rights issues. So again, the support to this type of governance that basically rides the horse, or the horse is artificial intelligence, but helps to have inclusive access, no matter the region, no matter the income level, no matter the conditions where you are, and to create a service that is the top quality possible so that they really value that service and defend that service over all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Máximo. Let's move on now with our next panelist online, Matias or Nif. The floor is yours, Matias. Are you online?
Hello here. Yeah,
okay.
I'm here on online. Just to give you a perspective, I come from working on digitalizing growers for the last 7 years in Latin America, Mexico, Argentina, so growers from many different perspectives. And what we've seen is that the challenge has to do with creating positive cycles with the growers, putting the grower in the center of everything or of the picture. Fair governance starts with one structural decision. The person who originates the information is the owner and the warrantor of it. So we need to build systems that reward the person generating the information, not the buyer, not the platform, not the state. From that single design choice, virtual cycles become possible. The buyer gets better market access through verified traceable origin. The farmer capitalizes through premiums, differentiation, agronomic support, and market stability. Two more pieces make this work at scale. I think we need to work on data standardization. Everything is very difficult. They're different in different geographies, and there's a lot of trying to catch what has to be done in different places and standardizing the practices, which is something that is starting to happen, makes things much more easy and fast for these long value chains to organize themselves. We need to find ways so records are interoperable across supply chains and regulatory frameworks. And we need a qualification system that measures the process, not only the outcomes. Certifying is a snapshot, is fragile, and it works towards a fixed goal. So if we work towards the process itself, things are going to be easier to scale and start moving towards these virtual cycles. That's pretty much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Matias, for your interventions. And now it's my pleasure to give the floor to Jedidah Wambui in Nderitu. Please, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and good afternoon, everyone. First, I would like to appreciate everyone, and especially the stakeholders of the technology from morning. And just to echo on one of the things that was mentioned by one of the panelists in the previous session, that no data, no AI. And as a farmer representative in Kenya and also farmers markets, because I'm a farmer myself, it's important to mention, and I hope with the permission of the CFS, that just like we have land, water, and seeds, which agriculture has depended so much on that. And I think it's time we also include data in that list. And I hope I could get the permission to mention that here, that data is as important as these resources that are in agriculture. Because without data, again, there is no AI. And when it comes to the people that are partakers of the food systems and nutrition, which we are the farmers, and the big question is if these agricultural resources we are able to access. The big question is we are not able to know who owns our data, who actually collects it sometimes, and how we are going to get benefits from the data that is collected. And when we mention governance, we need to look at the issues of power. And I think this has been mentioned over again by our panelists, that how is data collected, who controls it, how can we access this data, and again, how are we going to benefit as farmers? And for me, the question this afternoon is, what is the meaning of fair governance to me, as well as fellow women back at my country? And fair governance to me would just be mentioned in 3 pillars. One is traceability, and to be specific about traceability is transparency, benefit sharing, as well as participation. And when we mention the word participation, the big question is who is participating in this decision making. And when we talk about responsible agriculture investment in agriculture and resources, we need to make sure that we're including everyone, especially women and youths, that no one is going to be left behind in terms of either data collection, management of data, and also the impact that comes with it. Again, benefit sharing, what's the benefit at the end of the day? Once the data is collected, how do we benefit as farmers? Do we even get the feedback? Because this is the same data that helps us be able to trace pest and disease surveillance. This is the same data that we are used to, is being used today in aggregation, production, transport, and even to the consumer level, being an end-to-end food system. So the big question that we have here is, how do we become benefit sharers in this data collection? And again, transparency. So many times we have data being collected every day, but we do not know how it's being collected sometimes. We do not know who or which organizations are collecting this data, or even how it's going to be used. And I feel it's time that we create a transparency system, even that includes the farmers, so that we have every detail from the beginning, be it data protection, be it even issues to do with feedback. Because in every communication, in every communication that is taken care of. There must be feedback. And an example that I would like to give, sometimes data is collected, some farmers benefit either through subsidies and others don't. So the question is, let's be a bit transparency so that this data reaches every person. Because what summarizes all this is capacity development. Because if there is no capacity development in data governance, then we're not able to take care of everyone. So this is the involvement of either government stakeholders, and I like even what His Excellency started by mentioning. There is what Kenya is doing. Of course, technology developers or surveyors, researchers, all of them must be included so that we have a common agenda. We have data literacy, we have also digital literacy, and even follow-up support that is trickling down to the farmers. And as I summarize the question, data is a new resource. We can all agree right now because of the modern agriculture. And the question is nothing, and what we can, data has become a new resource, but the foundation is trust. If we cannot build or create a space where farmers themselves can be able to trust what is being presented to them, then we'll not have been able to create a fair data governance that involves both the partakers and the developers of data. So one challenge is not only how that we build smart technology, but it's also how we are going to build stronger collaborations, partnerships, and also ensure that everyone is included in this partnership. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jedidah. It's my pleasure now to give the floor to Jakob for answering to our question. Jakob, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. Excellencies, delegates, ladies and gentlemen. As the first question says, data and AI are now infrastructure for food systems. They shape what is seen, what is measured, and what gets acted on. And infrastructure is never neutral. It carries the priorities of whoever builds it, finances it, and controls it. I think that three logics are in play at once. The market logic wants to extract value from data. The logic of states is about security and control. And the civic logic of farmers, consumers, and communities is about rights, livelihoods, and trust. Each logic is valid. But each on its own, in isolation, gets it wrong. In very broad strokes. Left to the market, data is gathered where it pays, and the smallest farmers and the poorest consumers become invisible. Left to the state, it becomes surveillance. Left to communities, the trust is there, but perhaps the skill is not there. Social scientists Mary Douglas, Marco Verwey, and Michael Thompson have argued that to address these tensions, we need clumsy solutions. Yes, you hear that well, clumsy. To help the translators, maladroite, torpe, goffe. Other languages you can do yourself, I hope. The idea is that complex problems resist single, elegant designs. The arrangements that hold up keep these rival logic, the three logic that I mentioned, in the room together instead of letting one win. So fair governance in AI in food systems will not look tidy. It will be clumsy by design. It will accommodate these different logics. So two moves in practice. Each one is a design that holds like a paradox together rather than choosing a side. First, a paradox in the data. A rule meant to protect can also exclude. That's the paradox here. So take the EU deforestation regulation. It asks for proof that a crop did not come from a cleared forest. That proof can be produced with AI, combining satellite and ground truth data. But the smallholder who cannot produce that proof is the one a buyer quietly drops, not the large plantation that has the data. So a rule written to save forests ends up punishing the smallest farmers. The design answer is to make the reference data a public good. So at the Alliance of Biodiversity International Field, we run something called Sample Earth, building, together with many partners, an open GPS-located reference data set so that crop and land cover maps are accurate everywhere, not only where it pays, so not just the market logic. Second, a paradox in architecture. So connection can also mean dependence. Satellite internet, like Starlink, is a silent revolution. I think many of us have maybe not seen it, but it's already reaching remote indigenous communities in the Amazon, for example, really changing the reality on the ground. But the same technology that connects these communities to the world also ties them to a single private provider. So the answer to this dependency is to keep capability local. So alongside the large models that we all know, large language models, ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, and so on, there are also small language models that have been mentioned already. They're light enough to run on a phone. They work offline, and they keep the data and the value in the community. Connectivity reaches in from the center, but local capability keeps power at the edge. This requires focused investments and good governments to avoid extractive models, to develop these small language models. But in all cases, develop such solutions which should stop accepting false trade-offs, openness or control, privacy or usefulness. Good design reconciles them. Federated learning is perhaps the clearest example. In federated learning, the model travels to the data, so you don't extract data. It learns where it sits, where the data sits, and comes back, and that model comes back improved. The raw data never leaves place. So you can get the insight without the extraction. So what does fair governance look like in practice? I think it's not a rule book handed down from above. It is a discipline of design, the search for the arrangement, where the rule that protects also includes, where the link that connects also provides freedom, and where data stays private and still can be useful. Power is distributed not by taking it from one actor and handing it to another, but by building systems in which no one has to lose for someone else to gain. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jakob. Let's move now to our second questions for our distinguished panelists. Behind every artificial intelligence tool deployed in a food system, there are choices about what's data, what's priorities, what's risk. As this technology scale, how do we ensure that those most affected are directly involved? Can you point to a genuine best practice in actions and what made it work? So I suggest to follow the same order as before. You have more or less 4 minutes each. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Moderator, and once again, distinguished participants, you're welcome. I think the question is very clear. How do we ensure those most affected are directly involved? Before I go to this, to respond to this question, I want to really appreciate that most of the speakers in the earlier panels, and even including this panel, they have really talked to what I may end up also saying. Rikini Akanti from India, we had Jim Thomas, we had Pat Mooney. They all talked about their experience working with Kenyan farmers to promote a digital platform to enhance farmers' activities. So, is it possible to ensure that the most affected are involved? Yes, it is very possible. And I want to give a very good example of how this is possible from the Kenyan experience or practice. One, we realized that a number of artificial intelligence chatbots for smallholder farmers are democratizing agricultural extension services through low-barrier interfaces, directly countering the critical shortage of human agricultural extension officers. In Kenya, you may, for those who know, we have a real shortage of agricultural extension officers. And we are in a situation where we have one agricultural extension officer to 1,500 farmers, which is not very easy to reach and effectively serve. So what is happening to make sure that the farmers are involved through these AI chatbots? One, to make sure that there are systems that are accessible, platforms that are accessible to the farmers. For example, we have the Farmer AI on Safaricom's digital platform, and we also have the Crop Genius that operate via WhatsApp, SMS, serving low-cost feature phones in remote areas with poor internet connectivity. Why is this point very important? We need those platforms that will not add or increase costs for the users. And we are talking about platforms that can be used on cheap phones in remote areas with very limited internet connectivity. That way, you'll have many people involved. Just to also mention what Rikini said, the Digital Greens Farmer Chat. This platform allows farmers to send voice notes accommodating varying literacy levels. Large language models are fine-tuned to interpret and respond to English, Swahili, and even Sheng. I don't know if some of you know what Sheng is. Sheng is a mixture of English and local dialects or Swahili. And how does this help? Not everybody speaks English. And if you get platforms or systems that are only attuned to English, then it means you are excluding those people who can speak English. And by doing this, we localize the technologies for users. And that is one way we get more affected to be involved. The second aspect is making platforms that have tangible impact. How does this work? In this case, when a farmer notices crop damage, they snap a photo and send it to a chatbot. Computer vision models analyze these visual symptoms to instantly identify pests or diseases and provide tailored treatment solutions. Why? This is very important because you don't need to cover long distances to take samples of crops or animals to a center for them to be analyzed. Take a photo will be analyzed somewhere, and a farmer will get a response. When there is tangible impact from a certain platform, it encourages all farmers to believe in what artificial intelligence or what technology can do. And chatbots interface with localized Internet of Things in weather stations and satellite data, such as the Imarika system, sending proactive alerts detailing exact planting windows or drought risks, precisely mapping to the farmers in the regions what circumstances, when to plant, when likely a drought is coming. I think these platforms are very important for farmers. And that is why we say only platforms with tangible impact will really attract more to be involved. Thirdly, quality assurance is very important. To prevent harmful AI hallucinations, such as recommending toxic pesticides ratios, the Kenya agricultural chatbots utilize a hybrid retrieval framework. The underlying knowledge bases are restricted to scientifically verified data curated by the Kenya Agriculture and Research Organization. This, if the chatbot encounters a complex crop disease, it automatically escalates the query to an online or on-the-ground village champion or local agronomist. This human-in-the-loop integration ensures that technology augments, not replaces, the human expertise. Because we know there's been concerns that technology is replacing humans. But for people to embrace technology, you have to create an interface that makes sure that technology can work hand in hand with humans. What has made this to work is that farmer leadership is very important. You have to empower the farmers to be the leaders of the technology that they are going to be using. And that is how you create confidence. And in conclusion, I want just to say one thing. The future of food systems is going to be more digital. But whether that future is just or unjust depends on the choices people make today. For instance, fair governance of AI in food systems is not a technical problem. It is a political and an ethical one. So if we address these aspects of governance of AI systems, I'm sure we shall have fairness and equitability. It requires us to ask about whose data are we using, whose priorities are we intending to solve, and whose risks are we involved in. And this requires us to ensure that those most affected are not just consulted, but they must be empowered and involved. I thank you very much, and just to reassure you that Kenya is very much committed to working with all of you within the CFS framework to ensure that the smallholder farmers are empowered and involved. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. Let's move. Máximo, are you online?
Yes, great. Thank you so much.
The floor is yours, please.
Thank you so much. So let me start by saying, and consistent to what the Ambassador of Kenya was saying, quality and responding to the needs should be at the core of anything we do and provide with artificial intelligence. But for that to happen in a proper way, we need to have some necessary conditions to be put in place. The first one is that inclusion should be at the core of the design principle in the development of agri-food artificial intelligence systems. This means participatory processes which ensure representation of smallholder farmers, rural communities, women and other underrepresented demographics, when the rules are made, not after the system is deployed. In other words, artificial intelligence systems should be also designed with users rather than around them. And this is central because it responds to the needs and to be responsive to the needs of the users. And that's one core principle, as I mentioned before. Second, farmers and other frontline and end users of artificial intelligence-based agri-food technologies should be beneficiaries of the value delivered by artificial intelligence based on agri-food technologies. There is a risk that these users are treated as sources of agri-food data and not as beneficiaries, and they should be the beneficiaries. Third, the understanding on practical level that individuals and institutions must be able to understand and determine which of their data can be used and for what purpose. So the understanding is central. We cannot just extract data without explaining for what that data is going to be used and what will benefit them because of the usage of that data. Therefore, the provision of consent and transparent approaches should be included in data systems and artificial intelligence solutions, ensuring that all users can easily understand how their data will be used. In every activity we do in the field, we have to request the consent of the farmers. We have to request the consent of the operations of the value chain. And that consent should explain why we are doing this, why we are collecting this data, and what they should expect from it and how they should benefit from it. The co-creation of data systems based on these principles and the core objective of quality and that is directly to the needs will allow us and will allow artificial intelligence tools with farmers is therefore essential to their success in meeting needs at the field level. This also means that relevant capacity development efforts need to be implemented on the local scale, taking into consideration the digital readiness and maturity of different communities. Sometimes we have communities that don't have access even to the internet. They don't have access to cellular phones. So we need to find solutions that are without connection to the network, and those solutions already exist. Artificial intelligence can also unlock access to information in remote local dialects and how or no connectivity settings, for example, but these user requirements must be advocated for from the beginning, or the risk being excluded from the information ecosystem is entirely. So we need to be careful that we prepare whatever system we want to deploy that should take into account the level of connectivity, the human capital, the dialects and the languages this needs to be translated, and especially how we can do it without being part of the network. Another example is the app-based advisory services which also require access to smartphones, excluding by design those without. To reach these more vulnerable, more accessible technical solutions include voice-based advisory or SMS. For example, the FAO Digital Services portfolio fosters digital inclusion to rural communities by providing locally contextualized agricultural information through a user-friendly mobile application or SMS alerts, and by extending access to communities with limited or no internet connectivity through the portable DSP in a box solution. FAO is involved in facilitating these participatory processes in our fields and waters globally. In Georgia, for example, an artificial intelligence power irrigation advisory app is operational in Marneuli as part of the FAO Digital Villages initiatives, in a context where smallholder greenhouse farmers were making irrigation and fertigation decisions largely by guesswork and low digital uptake and few affordable local language tools. The intervention introduced real-time, data-driven guidance and 3-day ahead irrigation predictions. The case shows how FAO can broker private sector agri-tech into smallholder communities by acting as the bridge between the supply and the demand, localizing the app into Georgian, supporting sensor installation and training farmers. This highlights international organizations play a crucial role in fostering multi-stakeholder approaches in the development of artificial intelligence power solutions. They are in a unique position to bring together governments, researchers, and private sector actors and representatives of the end of the beneficiaries to ensure that solutions are designed to deliver benefits in an equitable manner. This helps to ensure that the digital readiness of all stakeholders is taken into consideration and that artificial intelligence does not inadvertently widen existing gaps in the use of technology. Let me be clear. Artificial intelligence has complexity in the way it has been built up. It has complexity in the models, the language models. It has complexity in the quantitative model. We use both of them. Language models for extension services, for example, quantitative models for prediction. But to be able to move forward and to be able to be inclusive, we need to be sure that the quality is there, as it was mentioned by Kenya, and the quality can be assured through technical processes so that we're sure that what we provide is aligned to the best possible quality of delivery and therefore is a best possible public good, but also to be sure that it responds to the needs. And that's where the inclusion, that's where the co-design is extremely important, and that's where we need to take into account local considerations so that we don't exclude people by definition. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Máximo. Let's move with our next speaker. Patti, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Great. And I thank you again for this rich conversation. I think this is a very valuable forum, and thank you. In the second question, we're asked how to ensure that those most affected by the risks of AI technologies are involved. We would also want to ensure that those most affected are not harmed. So first of all, the CSIPM advocates for a pause or even a stop in the implementation of these technologies and uplift the precautionary principle. We need to name the risks, especially as we are experiencing the hyperscaling of artificial intelligence. The global South is especially vulnerable to these risks, but these risks are inherent and universal. They include biopiracy, land grabbing, extreme exploitation of labor, extreme exploitation of our natural environment, increased cost to the use of water, energy, and materials, surveillance, loss of privacy, and questions of data ownership. The loss of indigenous and traditional knowledge, especially for the sharing of this knowledge with future generations, is a real concern. These are serious risks to the future of humanity, as these technologies and their infrastructure threaten to cross the threshold of planetary boundaries, increase the chaos of climate change, and eliminate and replace labor. There's also the concern about the enclosure of commons. Why isn't technology considered a common good? We're stripping away traditional rights, and there's a concern for data colonization. These real and already existing risks are increasing migration, displacement, conflict, and hunger. We already have rights-based, proven frameworks that we need to draw on as we look to governance of artificial intelligence and digitalization. These include the Indigenous people's right to free, prior, and informed consent, the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, the UN Declaration on the Rights of Peasants and others working in rural areas, the care principles of Indigenous data and knowledge and traditional knowledges, the collection and collective benefit, authority to control, responsibility, and ethics. And there are so many others. We don't need to start from scratch. The benefits of artificial intelligence and digitalization in our food system are not certain, even if we eventually have governance mechanisms in place. By placing them in this question as core infrastructures, it makes the assumption that they are neutral, necessary, and inevitable. But we must first consider the alternatives, including agroecology, that has a well-documented benefit in regard to food security, food sovereignty, climate change, and biodiversity. The future of humanity and of our precious earth are at a crossroads. We need a vision of the future that recognizes our relationship to nature. We can exist without artificial intelligence. We cannot exist without what the earth provides us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's move to our next speaker, Mattia Onif, online. The floor is yours. Mattia?
Hello, can you hear me? Yeah. Yeah, I'm participating in this panel through the CFS private sector mechanism. And we've been verifying more than 29 million of hectares across 17 countries. So I'm coming through the private sector here. When data collection only serves the buyer sustainability report, participation requires coercion, and it never produces honest data. The only durable alternative is a system where the same act of data collection generates something the farmer actually needs: market access, credential, a verified improved record, a stronger negotiation position. When participation is self-interested, it holds. As an example of what we're doing in practice, for 1 hectare coffee producers in rural Latin America, no connectivity, no smartphones. In that scenario, digital inclusion doesn't mean training farmers to use an app. It means plugging the human infrastructure that already exists. The network of field engineers who visit the producers regularly for agronomical support. The engineering has the conversation, the farmer talks through the season, inputs used, problems encountered, practices applied, the engineers capture it. The platform structures that info as a satellite cross-reference crop story held by the producer. The important thing here is that all the information gathered in these scenarios belongs to the producer, and we find benefits for the producer themselves. we structure all this into a signed satellite. The farmer never touches the platform. They don't need to. The engineer is the trusted bridge between the oral knowledge and a verifiable record. And this comes as a contrast with what we normally think of when we think about digitalization. We need to use more the natural networks that are already on the ground, people networks. What the farmer gets back is concrete, better guidance on each subsequent visit, better yields over time, and with their crop story documents, the crop story documents, the continuous improvement trajectory that meets a specific standard, in this case 4C. They get access to markets and to a premium price tier. The hardest problem is after the farm gate. When we work with aggregators, the incentives in the value chain need also to be aligned in order to make all this information move through the value chain to the market. All this information gets mixed and lost in the process many times. The mechanism that fixed this was economic. In this case, we work with Nestle, and they play a differential on verified origin lots, and that helps creating a virtual cycle in the value chain. With the result is that we get a complete chain of signed records from farm aggregator, processors, buyers, where no actor had to sacrifice margin for transparency. I'm trying to bring this to the table as one of the best case studies that we found. We're working with many clients in Ecuador, with smallholders too, and every time things work when you work the value chain as a whole, as a living organism, where you need to bring the incentives back to the place where the data is being originated, and not treat it as an extraction of data that only is used for the reporting. That's the main point here.
Thank you very much. Let's continue with Jedidah. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. So as we figure out examples that have worked in our different spaces, whether in the farmers markets, in cooperatives that involve farmers and stakeholders, it's important to shift from building technology for farmers to actually working with farmers and building the technology. Because the examples that I will mention, they've worked well because we considered challenges that were being cited by farmers. And these are the common challenges of either access to markets, pest and disease, and either issues to do also with soil management. And a good example that we've worked a lot with is the Kenya Agriculture and Livestock Research Organization, because they have an agricultural advisory service where most of the farmers, either in cooperatives or in the spaces of our farmers markets, are able to access. And also mentioning farmers market, as a farmers market, we've been able to work with technology a lot in the cases of food biodiversity. And we engaged ourselves in a food biodiversity count that involved having farmers to first do physical count of forgotten, let me use the word forgotten, or indigenous vegetables. And after the physical count, which was a lot, we figured out that this was information that was very important. So we were able to work in training them how to feed this data online in our databases, so that they're able to see actually the many vegetables, the many forgotten crops that they have to bring to, they keep bringing at the market, yet the consumers are not aware of them. So in the process of doing the food biodiversity count, we've been able to make better decisions, either to the consumer level, educating them about the nutrition of these heritage crops, as well as identifying other local crops, and also increasing visibility and also tracking production from our farmer level. And again, just to mention, remember the farmers are not data providers. They keep influencing the decisions we make as farmers markets because we also partner with other organizations like KENAF, which is Kenya National Farmers Federation, with a program known as Sauti ya Mkulima. This means a voice to the a voice of the farmers. And in this partnership, we've been able to train some of our farmers with digital literacy, and even some that are involved in the corporations have been able to even access some subsidies for their farm fertilizers and also other farm management equipment. So also just to mention what the government is doing, as mentioned by His Excellency, we have a regulatory sandbox project by the government that involving all the stakeholders, including the farmers themselves, and they're able to do the testing before being able to scale it up to the market. And that has worked well, being involved under the KENAF and also other farmer cooperatives. Just to summarize, that the success of AI and digitalization will only be measured whether it has strengthened the food system and food nutrition, and also improve our economies, support biodiversity, and continue to protect the dignity of food providers. Because as much as we discuss about food systems and nutrition, the providers themselves are the farmers, and they must be equitable, they must be involved, and we must maintain their dignity by making sure they are also decision makers and partakers in these forums. Farmers do not reject innovation. Sometimes they reject exclusion. So we must, as we adopt technology, we must be able to make sure that farmers see the value in it, they understand the process, they trust it, for us to have better technology and data governance. Thank you.
Thank you, Jedidah, for your very insightful considerations and message. The floor is now yours, Jakob. Please.
Thank you. So question 2 is about tools and choices. Behind every tool there are choices about data, priorities, and risks. Because many choices are often made in the first sketch of the design, participation cannot be a consultation at the end. It has to be in the design. It's a bit like energy-saving buildings. So I often say this to my team. Energy-saving buildings, 80% of all the savings, according to architects, are in the first sketch. They're not in the bulbs that you use at the end. It's in the first sketch. So if you don't involve people at that stage, participation and involvement of your future users is really not very meaningful when you do design. And methods for this exist. Participatory design, human-centered design, value-sensitive design. So if it's about AI, we also need to remember that AI models already come as designed, and there's many choices and biases in the models that we use. If it's large language models, they're already in there. Cultural bias, for example. There's been very interesting research about, for example, if you have a family problem, you ask ChatGPT about it. It makes many assumptions that are more based on Western culture than how you would manage a family in Asia or in Africa and in other contexts. And then also, many policies kind of, in the end, generate a fiction of involvement. So think of cookies, right? We click every day on accepting, do you accept this cookie? And it doesn't really protect us from anything, whether you click yes or no. Consent, one click at a time, is kind of a fiction of control. So there are models that can change that. And I would like to talk a little bit about this model of a data trust. I think we've mentioned it before. So in a data trust, an intermediary holds the data under a duty of loyalty to the people who generate the data. So the data stays closed in principle, yet others, researchers for example, can still use it on request, on reasonable request. For example, in the case of food security, the topic we're talking about here, researchers could get very important insights about food security, for example, from mobility data, how people move around. Like food security is not only about food moving around, it's also about stomachs moving around. You have to remember that. So with a data trust, you could actually share mobility data while still protecting people's privacy. So in that case, privacy and use of data kind of are no longer a trade-off if you have a data trust. These kinds of models are already used, for example, for patient data. So if you have a rare disease, you can decide through a data trust to share your data, but only to those researchers who are going to make serious use of those data for health purposes, not just to the rest of the world. You don't want to share all your data to the rest of the world, right? If it's about very intimate things like your health. So an example of a model that resembles a data trust in food security is Fumakazikia in Niger. So this is a farmer-led federation in the Maradi region, and they have tens of thousands of members, and they run research with more than 1,000 farmers every year. And the data sits with them, with the organization. And then they share with researchers selectively on their own terms. So what made it work is that the organization existed first, right, with its own leadership, its own priorities, and the capacity also of them to analyze their own data, but then they can bring in researchers as well. So the power in this case kind of follows local ownership, but it also has this capacity to engage national and international research, right? So it's not one or the other. That's the point I want to make. So participation is not just tokenism, like asking for a cent when the design work has already been done. Participation is also not dividing a pie. And sometimes we talk about it like that. Power, it's either you or me. It's not only that. It's not always, or it's not, hopefully never, a zero-sum game. So it's not only about one side kind of handing over control to the other. It's about enabling dialogue and collaboration. And that should run all the way down into the details of designing AI system. Not only at the big slogans and then the details happen after by technical people. We should be having this very careful design of systems where also the details matter a lot. So it's about creating the conditions for creativity that overcomes these kinds of trade-offs, that can have the good things of both sides. Because I believe that the best solutions are the ones that no single party could have designed alone. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jacob. We are at the end of the session, so I suggest to leave the questions for our next panel that is about our way forward. So we could actually have there an engagement. I think that's the plan. I want to thank you all our speakers and participants to this session. And we can move now to the fourth one. And I will leave the moderation to Marco. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, Elisabetta. Thank you to all of you for the passion showed so far. We enter into this final segment called The Way Forward. Since this morning, we learned about what is artificial intelligence, data governance, and digitalization. Then we estimated and elaborated what are the pros and the cons of this system. And finally, we looked at the possible governing system. So we can summarize that basically we have all become expert about artificial intelligence. And now we are called to move to another segment, which is the 2.0 of these events, which is the way forward. How do we esteem, how do we elaborate in our experience the future for this useful tool? We have a call for, it's an open discussion dialogue, so we have some reserved speeches from the beginning, but basically it's an open discussion, so everyone is entitled to speak in this segment to contribute to the success of this event. I have the pleasure to have, along with these initial steps, a few people, in particular Sofia Monsalve, UN Special Rapporteur on the Right to Food, His Excellency Nosifo Nauska, Ambassador of South Africa and former chair of CFS, Annette Schenegens, Deputy Permanent Representative of the European Union, Dolph Holtschesser, Minister Consular of the Minister Consular for Agriculture of the U.S. Permanent Representation before United Nations in Rome, Benjamin Wazi Adom, Advisor of the Agriculture and Fishery Trade Policy Commonwealth Secretariat, who is connected online, and then I have Sabrina Mansilla from Society for International Development, and Daniela Morra from IFAN. So without further ado, I would call Sofia Monsalve for her intervention. What I recommend to all of you is to have a brief intervention to make sure that everyone can contribute to the success of this segment. Please, Sofia, you have the floor. Thank you.
Bien, muchísimas gracias. Voy a hacer uso de la interpretación. Muy buenas tardes a todas y a todos ustedes. Es un honor para mí estar hoy dirigiéndome a ustedes por primera vez de manera formal como la nueva relatora especial del derecho a la alimentación. Mi nombramiento por parte del Consejo de Derechos Humanos fue en marzo de este año y estoy profundamente agradecida por este recibimiento tan cálido que el CSA y las distinguidas embajadoras y embajadores y todos los participantes y miembros del CSA me han dado. Quiero reiterar mi compromiso con seguir trabajando colectivamente por la realización del derecho a la alimentación, así que espero que durante mi mandato tengamos mucha oportunidad de colaborar de manera fructífera. Quiero entonces informarles que he decidido hacer el informe que voy a presentar al Consejo de Derechos Humanos en marzo de 2027 sobre el tema de conocimiento, ciencia y tecnología y su importancia y rol para la realización del derecho a la alimentación. Este es un tema que los relatores que me precedieron en este mandato todavía no han tratado de manera sistemática. En ese sentido, hay una, si ustedes quieren, una laguna en el mandato y entonces por eso he decidido hacerlo. Menciono esto porque me parece que va a ser un trabajo, de esta manera voy a poder colaborar en la construcción de un marco regulatorio sobre el tema de inteligencia artificial, gobernanza de datos y infraestructura digital pública. Yo entiendo que esta mañana esta sala ha habido un consenso sobre la importancia de avanzar ahora sí efectivamente en la construcción de este marco regulatorio y en ese sentido el CSA juega un rol muy, muy importante. Pienso que es el lugar donde hay pluralidad de visiones, donde hay una activa participación plural también de diferentes actores. Y en ese sentido, entonces, pienso que el CSA, escuchamos esta mañana, que es el llamado de muchas personas a desarrollar entonces ese marco regulatorio que evidentemente interactuará con otros espacios de Naciones Unidas donde también se está discutiendo el tema de la regulación y de la gobernanza de la inteligencia artificial y los datos. Decidí también hacer mi primer informe sobre el tema del conocimiento, la ciencia y la tecnología porque como relatora especial yo tengo una preocupación muy importante y es proteger y asegurar la permanencia de los sistemas de conocimiento de los pueblos indígenas y las productoras y los productores en pequeña escala, los productores de alimentos, campesinos, pescadores, pastores. En el panel anterior, Patti Naylor fue muy enfática en decir que el conocimiento de estos grupos sociales es esencial en el momento por el que está atravesando la humanidad y no nos podemos dar el lujo de seguir perdiendo estos sistemas de conocimiento de manera acelerada. Son sistemas preciosos e invaluables y en ese sentido me parece que tenemos que redoblar todos los esfuerzos para su protección. Por esta razón, y aplicando el principio precautorio para salvaguardar la capacidad de estas comunidades y para evitar una pérdida irreversible de conocimientos, apoyo el llamado que se ha hecho en este foro para declarar una moratoria en la expansión de la infraestructura digital necesaria para aplicar la inteligencia artificial en escala global. Necesitamos entonces primero establecer ese marco regulatorio efectivo para asegurar que estas nuevas tecnologías contribuyan verdaderamente a realizar el derecho a la alimentación y derechos conexos, como los derechos de los pueblos indígenas, derechos de los campesinos y las campesinos, los trabajadores y las mujeres. En coherencia, me parece, con este abordaje, es imperativo que las Naciones Unidas, y en nuestro caso el CSA y la FAO, establezcan mecanismos de evaluación ex ante de los impactos de estas tecnologías para autorizar su uso antes de que sean aplicadas sin ningún tipo de control y de riesgos y con una clara asignación de responsabilidades en casos de daños. Me parece que también es necesario decir que si el objetivo principal desde un punto de derechos humanos es salvaguardar, preservar la integridad y la autonomía de estos sistemas de conocimiento, es obvio que existirá la posibilidad de no adoptar las tecnologías relacionadas con la inteligencia artificial, porque las comunidades y los pueblos indígenas tienen derecho a la libre determinación y a decidir qué tipo de tecnología y de conocimientos ellos quieren adoptar. Esto me parece muy importante porque, de nuevo, yo estoy convencida de que no podemos reducir toda la conversación sobre ciencia, conocimiento y tecnología únicamente al enfoque de inteligencia artificial, porque esto tiene el riesgo de empobrecer el desarrollo de nuestros conocimientos. Y en este sentido necesitamos proteger esa visión plural determinada por la libre determinación de las diferentes culturas del planeta. Bien, decía entonces que me parece que hay un consenso en la necesidad de que el CSA contribuya a crear un marco regulatorio, pero sin embargo me parece que hay diferentes entendimientos en la sala sobre qué regular y cómo regular. En este sentido, yo quiero hacer énfasis en que el CSA no empieza de cero. Hay importantes elementos que ya fueron esbozados en las recomendaciones sobre la recolección de datos que el CSA ya adoptó. Algunos aspectos clave que me parece que este marco regulatorio debería incluir es la protección de los datos no personales de pueblos indígenas y productores de alimentos a pequeña escala ligadas a sus sistemas de producción, la capacidad de controlar, determinar quién tiene acceso a esos datos y de usarlos y beneficiarse de ellos. También fue mencionada la importancia de proteger los conocimientos de los sistemas de conocimiento tradicionales, el derecho al consentimiento libre, previo e informado de los pueblos indígenas, el derecho a la consulta de las comunidades campesinas y otras comunidades tradicionales, la igualdad de género. No hemos hablado mucho de ese tema, pero también tiene que ser un principio central en este marco regulatorio, y obviamente garantizar la participación de los pueblos indígenas y los productores de alimentos en la gobernanza de estos datos. Me parece que estos elementos ya están en las recomendaciones del CSA, pero vemos que ni la FAO ni el Programa Mundial de Alimentos han avanzado, por ejemplo, en implementar ya estas recomendaciones. La FAO no cuenta con un sistema que le permita a los pueblos indígenas, los productores de alimentos, participar en el diseño, por ejemplo, de los programas y las iniciativas que tiene FAO con relación a la inteligencia artificial y a la digitalización. Eso no existe. La FAO tampoco reconoce, por ejemplo, en su política de protección de datos a los datos no personales de estos grupos sociales. Entonces, me parece que estos serán puntos muy importantes y este marco regulatorio tendrá que ser implementado por la FAO y el Programa Mundial de Alimentos y el FIDA, por supuesto. Otro tema que salió es el de la infraestructura digital pública. Creo que muchos participantes se refirieron a este tema, pero yo estoy un poco preocupada porque el entendimiento de qué es lo público, me parece que tenemos que acordar criterios claros para que este carácter sea verdaderamente público. Mi preocupación se refiere al hecho de que la FAO, por ejemplo, depende de las corporaciones tecnológicas con sede en Estados Unidos como Amazon, Google y Microsoft para su infraestructura digital. Estas corporaciones son privadas, pero la infraestructura digital de FAO y los bienes digitales públicos que la FAO ha creado están completamente inmersos en las nubes de estas corporaciones. Escuchamos también esta mañana que es de dominio de la información pública que el Programa Mundial de Alimentos tiene acuerdos con Palantir y no sabemos en qué condiciones, en qué términos, y esto es causa de una preocupación muy grande. En primer lugar, porque esto puede generar riesgos de exclusión para los países que están sometidos a sanciones por parte de Estados Unidos. Me refiero aquí, por ejemplo, a Irán o a Cuba, porque no tienen acceso a estas plataformas de FAO, una organización de Naciones Unidas, siendo que el acceso de estos países a estas plataformas tiene que ser universal. Estos países son miembros de la ONU. Por otra parte, surgen inquietudes en cuanto a la transparencia, ya que estos contratos y los términos de acuerdo con estas corporaciones no se divulgan públicamente, ni tampoco se discuten en los órganos de gobierno de estas agencias de Naciones Unidas. El carácter dual de algunas de estas corporaciones que prestan servicios tanto para usos civiles como militares genera un nuevo nivel de conflictos de interés que causa profunda preocupación. Bien, en este sentido, me parece que este marco regulatorio entonces tiene que tener estándares muy claros sobre la transparencia en los términos de uso de estos proveedores de servicios de nube y servicios de computación. Se debe debatir públicamente, se deben hacer evaluaciones de riesgos, se debe definir de manera participativa cuáles son los valores y los objetivos de las plataformas digitales de la FAO o del Programa Mundial de Alimentos. Y se debe dar prioridad, como fue dicho en el panel anterior, al desarrollo de plataformas digitales territoriales, nacionales y regionales en colaboración con los productores de alimentos a pequeña escala, las empresas locales, instituciones de investigación y autoridades locales. Bien, finalmente quiero decir que los marcos regulatorios necesarios tendrán que también abordar temáticas como las que fueron presentadas esta mañana, relacionadas con todo el tema de comercio, relacionadas con temas también sobre finanzas internacionales. Y es entonces una compleja, un marco regulatorio que tiene que ser subsidiario, que tiene que ser en colaboración con otros espacios de Naciones Unidas y que tiene que estar firmemente anclado en los derechos humanos. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias, Sofía. De verdad es difícil destacar cuál es el tema más interesante porque yo todo lo encontré ser muy interesante. Yo creo que cuando se habla de gobernanza, lo más interesante es el acceso, ¿no? Porque no hay gobernanza si no hay acceso. Entonces, acceso a la protección de sus propios conocimientos como acceso también a los conocimientos de los demás. Entonces, se necesitan negras claras en este punto y vos lo explicaste de manera perfecta. Now it's my pleasure to introduce someone that we all know very well, His Excellency and personal friends, the Ambassador of South Africa, former chair of CFS. Please, Ambassador, you have the floor.
All right, thank you. Is it on? Thank you. Good afternoon, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, and friends. A privilege again to participate in this high-level forum under the CFS umbrella. What is at the heart of the global food governance architecture is what we need to navigate, both within the institutional ecosystem of the FAO and the wider UN or United Nations system. So for me, this is where I start. Rome remains a pivotal convening space where multilateral responses to acute food insecurity, malnutrition, famine, and agri-food systems transformation are advanced through international cooperation, norm setting, and shared responsibility. This, again, acknowledging the backdrop as already outlined by our Special Rapporteur, Sophia, we have a number of existing normative frameworks or policies, including the right to adequate food guidelines, data guidelines, peri-urban food systems guidelines, agroecology guidelines, and we are currently busy with resilient food systems guidelines. And we have the long list. We meet at a decisive moment, having heard from the previous panelists regarding their articulation of what artificial intelligence or digitalization or data-driven systems mean for food systems transformation. So the key is that artificial intelligence and digitization are no longer peripheral innovations. They are becoming structural determinants of global food systems, shaping how food is produced, traded, priced, and accessed, including how it is stored for rainy days, whether those days come through conflicts, a protracted crisis, or through climate effects. So these are technologies that are already transforming the agricultural value chains, climate risk analysis that we heard about also in the summary of CGIAR, how we prepare ourselves to navigate the risks, both including early warning systems and also the global supply chain networks. The central question, therefore, before us is not whether digital transformation will reshape food systems, but rather under what governance frameworks, according to which normative principles, and with what distributional consequences are we going to utilize this innovation. In essence, whether these innovations, technologies will operate as a global public goods, as already also articulated, aligned also with the Sustainable Development Goals. Whether they will deepen existing asymmetries in capacity, access, and value creation. As Patti Naylor for CSIPM and Ms. Jedidah for the Coalition for Farmers Market in Nairobi mentioned earlier on during the panel, the earth is irreplaceable. Artificial intelligence should be used as a tool, not as a substitute. Wisely used in agroecology to protect our planet, our farmers, and nourish humanity to uphold dignity. Digital technologies and artificial intelligence are unlocking significant opportunities across the agri-food systems. Both what we had in respect of precision agriculture, satellite-based Earth observations, predictive climate modeling, AI-enabled pest and disease surveillance, and data-driven logistics optimization for improving productivity, efficiency, and resilience. The early warning systems are becoming increasingly sophisticated, strengthening the global capacity to anticipate food insecurity risks and climate shocks. However, these gains are not evenly distributed. Without deliberate governance interventions, digital transformation risks reinforcing structural inequalities in global food systems, where technologically capable and data infrastructure and innovation capacities remain concentrated in a limited number of countries and corporate actors. The risks then would be the emergence of a digitally divided global food economy, where some countries are data-rich and IA-enabled, whilst others remain structurally excluded from the benefits of innovation. Bridging then the digital divide in agriculture is not a technical aspiration. It is a systemic prerequisite for achieving food security, nutrition outcomes, and the right to food. Millions of smallholder farmers across developing regions, including my country, South Africa, remain excluded from digital agriculture due to gaps in connectivity. I heard the ambassador of Kenya speaking about simplified technologies, even the applications that would work on the phones or what low-tech phones that would enable farmers to navigate the digital innovation. Affordability and digital literacy become one of those gaps that we need to deal with. This exclusion directly limits access to markets, finance, climate services, and productivity-enhancing innovation. And I'm mentioning also these in the context of what the outcome of the G20 South Africa presidency, which also reflected how digital transformation should articulate at best how to resolve issues of poverty and inequality within the Sustainable Development Goals. So consistent within the emerging G20 discussions on digital public infrastructure and the FAO-led efforts on digital agriculture, digital inclusion must be treated as a core pillar of global food systems resilience, not as a secondary development objective. Data has become a strategic asset in contemporary food systems, and it underpins agricultural forecasting, as already indicated, climate risk modeling, commodity pricing, insurance mechanisms, and global supply chain coordination. Yet the governance of this data remains fragmented and uneven at the global level. The risks are that for developing countries, in this case, to become primary producers of raw data, whilst the value creation or the algorithmic development and monetization are concentrated elsewhere. A fair global digital food systems requires governance frameworks that are grounded in transparency, interoperability, data sovereignty, and equitable value sharing. As artificial intelligence becomes embedded in agricultural credit systems, land use planning, crop forecasting and supply chain optimization would require such governance to be more pronounced and nuanced. AI systems can improve efficiency and resilience, but they also introduce the risks related to bias, opacity, exclusion, and asymmetrical accountability, particularly in the context where regulatory capacity is limited. I want to conclude then by just again emphasizing therefore that a pressing need for internationally coherent normative frameworks is essential to ensure that AI in food systems is human-centered, transparent, explainable, and auditable, accountable actions across jurisdictions aligned with the right to food and international human rights laws. This is not a simple or simply a technical governance agenda. It is a question of global equity in the digital and algorithmic era. I'd like to stop there. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Ambassador. We learn always a lot from you. And I must say that I perfectly concur with the idea of digital transformation that you had, artificial intelligence in particular, supported by data governance and digitalization. It's a tool for supporting us and not for replacing humans. So it's very clear and very interesting, the approach that you have defined. Thank you again. Now, we move from the southern hemisphere to the northern hemisphere, and I'm pleased to give the floor to Annette Schenegans, Deputy Permanent Representative of the Permanent Mission before United Nations of the European Union. Please, Mr. Schenegans, you have the floor. I hope I have pronounced your name correctly and haven't distorted it enough.
I like the way you pronounce my name. It's very South American. So I think that so much has been said. I tried to not to repeat the many valuable comments and maybe also give a bit of view of, let's say, the North, the EU, is doing in this area. And then, of course, coming to the very pertinent question, what can we do at CFS to further advance this topic that's super important. But let me just highlight first, we've heard throughout the day, indeed, about the benefits of AI in agriculture, anything AI, including robotics and automatization, digitization, no? And we've heard, I think, with some good examples also that indeed it has a huge potential to increase resource efficiency in agriculture, to reduce waste, from production to consumption, to make even consumers' choices more easy and safe. We can track products from the production to the shelf. And finally, we see here in the FAO space and WFP and IFAD space, we can predict yields, crises, potentially humanitarian catastrophes much more precisely. I think this is something that we need to use to best effect to be more efficient in what we do. But of course, we've heard a lot about a number of ethical, social, and policy issues that are likely to arise even more as artificial intelligence begins to impact on agriculture at a large scale. And I will not repeat all this, but just to highlight so when I took notes, the headings for me were there are concerns about sustainability. And one thing that came out to my mind was really this question of if we adapt agriculture, plants and animals to the machines, to the algorithms, to the work, shouldn't it be other way around, that AI helps us to promote more diverse farming systems. So I think we're going maybe in a direction that where I could help us be much more precise, we're moving into a more uniform way of agriculture. There's one risk. Then we've talked a lot about the big power or the power of big tech, the data ownership. I think this is one of the main concerns, and how this data will be disseminated and used, so data governance is key. And then there was a lot of justice and fairness, and I wanted to highlight here a study we just had in the EU, where we looked at digitization, so not so much AI, but already in digitization, we saw a very heterogeneous picture that small versus big farms, different types of cropping systems, so crop versus livestock, a gender gap, education gap. So it is legitimate to wonder and to say that we're probably increasing the gap between farms and types of production. And then also there's a big concern about labor, even if we need in many countries labor in agriculture, it may make people redundant. And I conclude with Sophia, it's not just about people as workers, but what about the knowledge of people, the traditional knowledge, where is that going into the AI system? We don't know yet. So governance is crucial. And here I would like to say something about the EU. So the EU adopted in 2024 the AI Act. And I mention this here because it is the first ever comprehensive legal framework on AI. So we don't know if it's perfect or not, but we would like to put it here as an inspiration to look at it. Because when we look at governance, I think it's good to learn from experiences. And it doesn't have only an EU internal element, it has also an international digital strategy is included in that. It's one part is called EU AI Continent Action Plan and the AI Apply Strategy, but within that we have an international dimension. And we're trying to promote AI and other forms of digitalization through various instruments. We have an EU tech business offer to partner with other countries. And also, we have a mechanism called Global Gateway, by which we're financing, for example, a flagship on data governance in Africa, including in agriculture. I've seen somewhere, Ambassador of Kenya, yes. So we have one of the agriculture data platforms is in Kenya, the other one is in Rwanda. These are big flagships. Again, we don't have yet all results, they just started a year ago, but these are data platforms, so we try to make sure that the data don't just serve business, but that they, as we call them, human-centered, data governance is well-defined, and that data are not just used to generate profit for the public sector, but it becomes a public good. So these are some of the few elements that I'd like to put forward. Also, by the way, one other element we're using in Africa with these data platforms is how can small farmers get more easy access to finance. Finance requires a lot of predictable data in business plans, and we're trying to use AI to this end. So I think it's a very, very useful element we want to look at maybe. So to come to the question here finally is, where does CFS come into the picture? I think that what I just described, our governance or the work in FAO, NIFAT, and WFP, we look basically at, or we discuss basically between governments or experts. And I think that the CFS is a unique place where we can go beyond that and bring to the table not just governments and experts, but also civil society, farmers, private sector, and probably in a less formal setting. When we sit in governance bodies, we have limitations on the agenda, on the timing, and we need to get outputs. We need to get a resolution or, a conclusion. In CFS, we're free to really sit and reflect about the pros and cons and the types of governance we would like to describe and test. So it provides a unique space for inclusive conversation about social, ethical, and governance issues, and the potential applications in agriculture. And maybe just two or three other comments I'd like to make is, I think that CFS should probably even test new ways of getting out of its normal way of working. When we sit in CFS, October now a week, it's very intense. I would like to see CFS being more active and visible in, for example, when we come to FAO, in the governance bodies of FAO, when we discuss in the program committee, digitalization. I would like to see CFS there, or looking at Charles, the chief scientist of FAO, when we have in October the Science Forum, Science Innovation Forum. We tend to have very technical discussions. So where does the dialogue then take place between the Science Forum, technology, or biologists even, you know, and CFS? So that kind of bridge is something that we should pursue, certainly, in more effective ways. And then, this leads me almost to my final point is, we've heard a lot from Sophia, but also from Nosifo. The point is, how can we bridge, let's say, the more formal scientific knowledge and technical knowledge with traditional knowledge? Again, CFS for me is the forum where we can allow ourselves to bring that together. So to work on agricultural knowledge innovation systems, on acres, for example, on the topic of AI. That would be my wish list. And I hope that, I don't know if in October, probably we don't have time there, but we find a space to reflect on these kind of ideas. And last point is then now, to me, the main point was by Nosifo, the main question should be in CFS and beyond, how can AI, which is something we will not avoid, it's there, and it's there to be of good use, of course. How can we use it so that it contributes really effectively to meeting the Sustainable Development Goals? This is the main issue. So it's not about putting hurdles. I'm not sure moratorium or something else will really make the difference. We should put it in such a context that it is something we can promote to good effect. So the effect, the goals is the most important things. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Shanegas. I mean, I couldn't agree with you more about your nice words about CFS. CFS, it is actually the house of everybody, so it's where the multi-stakeholder dialogues take place, and subjects like AI find the right place at the end of this big crossroads where people can meet. And it is also true that CFS should have more and more exposure in other governing bodies, in other places, not only Rome, elsewhere, the scientific forum, because the more we speak and the more the example or the standards or the modus operandi of CFS, it's promoted, the more successful we can be. Thank you very much for your nice words. You should be our testimonials maybe in the future. Now it is my pleasure to move from the European Union to the West and to give the floor to Minister Counselor for Agriculture, Doug Hochschild, from the US Mission in Rome. Please, Doug, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today. I want to talk about artificial intelligence from a balanced risk management perspective, because I think we've heard different perspectives. I missed the morning sessions, which I'm bummed I did, so I've heard the last two, and I think a balanced discussion on risk management is kind of the key here. Artificial intelligence, digital agriculture, and other innovative technologies hold tremendous promise for farmers, food systems, and enhancing food security. They help increase efficiency, improve productivity, strengthen resilience, reduce food loss and waste, and add value for various stakeholders. They also introduce data privacy and management questions. Domestically, the United States is seeking to utilize these technologies to benefit American farmers and consumers. USDA's research and development priorities aim to advance 5 objectives. First, to increase profitability for farmers and ranchers by reducing input costs and expanding mechanization and automation. Second, to expand markets and create new uses for agricultural products that expand trade opportunities and develop bio-based and bioenergy innovations. Third, to protect animal health and plant health. We do this by preventing, detecting, controlling, and eradicating harmful pests and diseases. Fourth, to promote soil health and long-term land productivity through enhanced soil health practices, improved water efficiency and quality, and reduced input use. Fifth, to improve human health through precision nutrition tailored to individuals and their needs, and food quality through work in individualized dietary impacts and enhancing nutritional content. The Trump administration has a national policy framework for artificial intelligence. This framework underscores the importance of AI adoption, highlighting that individuals, companies, and countries that move fastest to capture productivity boost from AI will benefit the most. AI leadership means leveraging the best AI technologies to drive economic growth and quality of life improvements. We must avoid being overly focused on AI regulation that's a one-size-fits-all, and that's irrelevant by the time the ink dries or the file downloads. The United States strongly supports the UN Rome-based agencies adopting digital technologies to improve efficiency, accountability, and transparency, and most importantly, to better deliver on their mission. At WFP, this might look like drone use for the last mile delivery. At FAO, it might look like nurturing private sector collaboration and innovation. And we're looking forward to working with Charles Spillane, the new chief scientist. Unfortunately, that position was left open way too long at FAO. We look forward to working with him and his team on expanding the organization's knowledge and technical capacity. While USDA works to realize the tremendous potential upside of AI and digital technologies, USDA also recognizes that there are risks associated with these technologies, and those must be rigorously mitigated. These risks include cybersecurity vulnerabilities, potential nefarious uses of these technologies, particularly by nation states, and we also want to make sure that appropriately protecting data, especially biological data, is paramount to risk mitigation and sustained innovation. We want to underscore that this should be a risk conversation, a risk management approach, not a hazard-based approach. What role does CFS play? We welcome events like today where we hear about how countries, organizations, farmers, and companies are adopting new technologies. There are risks from utilizing these new technologies, but there are also risks of not using them. Sound risk management is key. These events allow us to better understand these risks and opportunities to share best practices, mitigation strategies, and development priorities. Given the rapid development we are seeing, we would not be supportive of overly prescriptive guidance, particularly at a time when there's often no consensus internally among countries on the best strategy forward. We also would not support a pause in this technology. A pause would lead to more hungry people worldwide. The United States looks forward to working with partners to harness AI, digitalization, and data governance in food security and nutrition in ways that support our farmers, small and large, are consistent with our values, comply with U.S. law, and improve global food security. I grew up on a farm in north central Iowa, and I truly believe that technology is a ground leveling tool that's out there, but there are decisions that need to be made and policies that need to be made to support the right use. We want to make sure that technology is leveraged to enhance productivity and ultimately to deliver on the mission of the Rome-based agencies to reduce hunger. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for your clear presentation, Doug. It's interesting to notice the availability, and US it's a big player as a European Union, and it's critical to understand what is the positioning vis-a-vis this new and innovative tool. Now it is my pleasure to give the floor to Benjamin Kwasi Adom, who is the advisor on agriculture and fisheries trade policy of the Commonwealth Secretariat. Please, Benjamin, you have the floor. It's online connected, so we will hear you from the remote area. Is Benjamin online?
Can you hear me, please? Can you hear me? Can you hear me or you can't hear me?
We can hear you loudly and clear. Please go ahead.
Oh, Oh, okay, oh, good. Thank you very much. Now, thanks for the opportunity to share what the Commonwealth Secretariat is also doing in this area. I want to just reference a framework that we have worked on that tries to answer a number of questions that are arising here. How to govern AI, data, and digital public infrastructure. So we are saying that if you want to govern AI, then we need to govern our data systems, taking into consideration the country cases. We need to empower countries to manage their data systems. That is the first thing. If we want to manage AI, if we want to govern AI. And if we want to actually do that, then we need infrastructure for our data. And that's where the DPI comes in. We need infrastructure. And that infrastructure is supposed to contain the data and then managed by our countries. And that is where we think what countries need is a data exchange infrastructure. Because what we've been hearing all over is duplication of data, everybody's collecting, people don't want to share because of policy concerns, security, and all kinds of things. So can we empower countries, each of our member countries, by enabling them to invest in digital public infrastructure, which is the technology part, to allow data exchange between existing data systems in the country. So you are not centralizing the data, but you are empowering every entity, whether farmers, extension officers, private sector, those who hold the data, to keep their data. So the DPI becomes an exchange platform, and then data is the commodity. And you empower the government to take the lead to manage that infrastructure. We always give the road infrastructure analogy when we are talking of DPI. But what does that mean? What is road infrastructure? Road infrastructure is not just the tarmac. Road infrastructure consists of the tarmac, which is the technology. It has the policies and guidelines on how to use the tarmac, the speed limit, the stop signs. It has a governance system to enforce the rules so that when you overspeed, you get your ticket. And it also has a revenue model, paying tax, road tax, and all. So road infrastructure is not just the tarmac. So what we are saying, national infrastructure for data, it's not just DPI, it's an integration of DPI, which is just the technical part. All the policies that we are talking of needs to apply to that infrastructure, all the data policies, not just in vacuum, it needs to apply to that DPI. And then we find a governance system that everybody can trust to ensure that people are following those guidelines. And the framework we work on, we are saying should be independent governance mechanism. So that private sector, government who have data system will be willing to share and exchange data through this infrastructure. And then by doing that, you create incentives for those who have the data to be part of this commodity exchange platform, where data is commodity and democratized to everybody to be able to be part of it. It's not open infrastructure, secure, protected, consent-driven, that farmers can benefit from their data, that, not only the companies will be benefiting, but our countries can benefit. So that is the framework that we worked on. We call it the National Agricultural Data Infrastructure. And we have launched it last October, the policy guide with the framework. And we are now trying to work with partners to deploy this framework to support some of the issues that are raised here. So I'll stop here. Thank you. I've put the link in the chat in case people want to know more about this framework.
Thank you very much, Jan Benjamin, for your witnessing. Certainly, we will explore through the links more information for understanding the positioning of the Commonwealth Secretariat vis-à-vis artificial intelligence. Thank you again. I would like now to call Sabrina Masinilla from Society for International Development. Please, Sabrina, you have the floor.
Over here, thanks. Thank you so much, Chair. I'm delivering this on behalf of the Civil Society and Indigenous Peoples Mechanism, based on our analysis of the discussions today, but also to offer some recommendations forward to the CFS. Now, I might repeat some what has been said earlier, but please bear with me because we do want to get this across. As it has been said in the morning and afternoon that artificial intelligence and digitalization is expanding faster than our capacity to govern it. Now, this is true in a context where, as highlighted by several panelists and the HLPE representative, that only a handful of tech giants control the clouds, the infrastructures, and algorithms in which the digital realm exists today, including even those applications showcased here as with the potential to support climate modeling and humanitarian action. Now, as right holders, we are deeply concerned about, first of all, this narrative of inevitability of AI and digitalization of food systems technology as if we are stripped of choice. The AI industry is speculative, it's predatory in terms of resources and data, and its economic benefits are largely unevenly distributed. As highlighted in the background note of this meeting, there is extensive evidence of negative impacts of the AI value chain on land, water, energy, with identified risks for data ownership. At the same time, there is no scientific evidence whether generative AI can actually accrue benefits to food security and nutrition. We therefore support the call made earlier by Mr. Pat Mooney and reiterated by Ms. Patti Taylor, but also the Special Rapporteur on the Right to Food, on the CFS to consider establishing a targeted moratorium on hyperscale AI infrastructure because of its potential impacts on food systems until mechanisms for independent assessments, guaranteed transparency, and public accountability are effectively in place. Risk assessment is not only necessary to protect those who use the technology, but those who bear the costs of the resource extraction and infrastructure to materialize it. We also need to ensure that we assess whether AI should be used at all. In some instances, even as the best tool for the job, as it has been said. We strongly believe that AI does not equal innovation. Innovation that effectively support equitable and resilient food systems are grounded in grassroots experiences and farmers' knowledges and experimentation. They are led by farmers and take place all around the world every day to effectively address farmers' needs, manage risks, and feed communities. Now, speakers today have highlighted that while a strategic resource in the digital economy, agricultural and farmers' data ownership, control, and protection remain largely uncertain. Now, in the face of no existing provisions for data governance, the deployment of data-driven technologies is not urgent, rather it's risky. So as mentioned by Ms. Patti Naylor and the Special Rapporteur on the Right to Food, the precautionary principle is crucial, and it should actually guide the adoption of new technologies. As it is, no new medicine is authorized without rigorous clinical trials demonstrating its safety. The same logic should apply to AI systems that may affect livelihoods, human rights, and food security and nutrition. Now, in this context, the CFS has a crucial role to play. Now, besides organizing such dialogues, timely dialogues, which are open and democratic, such as this one, it should also embark on a process to develop a guidance for the governance of AI in food systems. This should be coupled by mechanisms for monitoring its implementation and ensure technologies adopted in food systems are guided by the right to food, human rights, and public interest, and not agendas led by big tech and agribusiness. The CFS policy recommendations on data need to be implemented specifically around risk assessments, the protection of data and knowledge, also as called by the Special Rapporteur on the right to food. And we also ask the Rome-based agencies to apply these recommendations across their institutions. We believe that the CFS is the best place to guide this process, but also strengthen this coherency between the CFS, the FAO, and other multilateral spaces so that AI governance rules are defined within a transparent, democratic, and right-based framework. We would also welcome an independent report by the high-level panel of experts on on food systems and nutrition to prepare on the impacts of AI, to prepare a report on the impacts of AI in food systems, particularly on employment, inequalities, and injustices, and the rights of affected populations. Artificial intelligence is not just a matter of technological innovation. It is fundamentally a matter of governance. The CFS has a responsibility to ensure that this transition is guided by human rights, public accountability, and the right to food. And finally, we cannot ignore the role that big tech companies like Palantir have in the use of data and digital technologies as a weapon of war and famine. Therefore, the WFP must reassess whether embedding the software of a complicit military contractor within their data ecosystem pertaining the supply of food compromises its mission. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Sabrina. Thank you very much, Sabrina, for making this statement on behalf of the CSIPM. Now I would like to call Daniela Morra from the AFN group. Thank you, Daniela, you have the floor.
Good afternoon, and thank you very much. So I will be delivering an intervention on behalf of the private sector mechanism. Artificial intelligence and digitalization are already part of the way food systems operate. They are being used for early warning, climate risk management, productivity, traceability, and access to markets, among others. At the same time, their use raises important questions around several issues. We saw trust and accountability, to name a few. These opportunities and risks need to be addressed together through governance that is transparent and capable of supporting inclusive adoption. Responsible digital transformation requires recognizing and valuing that different actors contribute from different places and bring different capabilities. Governments, farmers, private sector, civil society, academia, UN agencies, and financial institutions. This is also where CFS shows the unique value, bringing these contributions together, supporting a digital transformation that is not only technologically possible, but also trusted, inclusive, and useful in practice. The private sector counts with a solid perspective from the ground, from those who produce, process, transport, trade, finance, and distribute food, and who understand the practical conditions needed for digital tools to be adopted and scaled. This operational experience matters. In normal times, it can help improve productivity, resilience, traceability. But also in moments of food security crisis, private sector actors also contribute with data, infrastructure, logistics, services, and delivery capacity that supports preparedness and response. always within appropriate governance frameworks. This is consistent with the examples that were raised today: digital services that help reach smallholder farmers, tools that connect information to practical decision-making, and public digital infrastructure where different stakeholders, including private sector, civil society, academia, and others can contribute under clear safeguards. For the private sector mechanism, governance and innovation should strengthen each other. Good governance creates the trust, the clarity, and the accountability needed for responsible innovation, investment, and adoption. Innovation, when developed in collaboration with users, helps translate food security and nutrition objectives into practical solutions. Better information, stronger resilience, improved productivity, safer food, more transparent markets. From today's discussions, I think we may agree that trust building and collaboration remain essential to move forward. This is how the digital tools become relevant, usable, and trusted, and sustainable. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We have ended the programmed intervention from the floor. Now the floor is open for further discussion. I see one person, two person, three person that want to speak. I don't know if we have also people connected online that want to intervene. So since we are gentlemen, we'll always give the floor to ladies that have requested to intervene. So please, the lady on my left, you have the floor. Thank you. Introduce yourself.
So mine is just a take-home because we create these policies, we create the technology, and the big question that I ask myself as a farmer is, farmers involved? And my take-home is, let's remember that nothing about farmers without farmers, because we'll sit and create this, and if it's not acceptable, or they do not build trust, and let's just be honest, behavior change process is such a big process. If there's no trust built from the foundation, then we'll not be able to achieve the end goal. Thank you.
Thank you. I like very much this slogan, nothing without farmers, nothing about farmers without farmers. I like it very much. Please, the gentleman in front of me, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you. The director of the WFP spoke about how AI was very useful in predicting hurricane paths and thereby saving lives in the Caribbean. The biggest island or the country in the Caribbean is Cuba. And the question is, was Cuba allowed to use that same AI, and it's the country most hit by hurricanes in that region. The member state that didn't allow Cuba to use AI to protect itself also stopped the release of a very popular AI platform recently. No foreign nationals are allowed to use it, no foreign entities are allowed to use it. The question, therefore, I have for the panel is, as we use AI more and more, as we become more and more dependent on it because it's so powerful, it's so useful, how can we have a situation where there is great precarity that countries are subject to? Because unlike other products, which once you sell, the buyer owns it, in the case of technology and AI, it's always dependent on the producer because there is no sale and purchase. It's always licensing to use. And therefore, the question to the panel is, how can there be food security when such a basic aspect of being able to control the use of technology is not available to member states of the world? Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, one quick addition. And in that context, the fact that WFP seems to have signed an agreement with Palantir becomes even more crucial because the same company is supposed to have provided technology for military operations in the recent past. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I think we will end I see also HLP that wants to intervene. So first, Pat, please, you have the floor.
Okay. Thank you very much. We hear constantly that one of the major advantages of AI and digital technologies will be to help us solve the problems of the breakages that constantly reoccur in the food supply chain, and that only AI is going to have the capacity to really rationalize it and make it work well and understand it even. And that's encouraging to hear that, but we haven't understood the fragilities of AI's supply chain. And I think we need to spend a moment just to think about that. I'm sorry we haven't discussed it today. We begin with the crucibles that are made from these unique quartz that comes out of one mine in North Carolina. And that one mine provides 70 to 90% of all of the key crystals that are required for the crucibles. If we didn't have that, we wouldn't have the chips. From there, we go to the one company in the world that's capable of making the machines that can make the chips. And that's in Germany, a Dutch company running in Germany, which provides, again, something to 70 to 90% of all of the machines that make the chips. And they cost $350 million each. They're rather expensive. But that one company, ASML, then the chips themselves are made by, again, in the range of 70 to 90% for the top chips in the world, are made by one company in Taiwan, TSMC, that produces those chips. Of course, the chip design comes from, again, one company, NVIDIA, the biggest company in the world by market valuation, based in the United States. That one company making all the key chips. Beyond that, we don't usually understand the complexities around even making the lasers that make the chips, which is, again, one company in the United States. We don't understand, again, that we depend on the helium that comes out of, much of it comes out of, guess where? Qatar, from one plant which has been damaged through the Straits of Hormuz, and it can't get out now. That vulnerability hasn't been dealt with. We'd also understand that if we put we haven't dealt with the question of and I'll end with this, with the vulnerabilities and the things we didn't know about the supply chain, and about the side effects of digital technologies. If we conclude that, we'll get the weather advice from satellites produced by, again, one major company that's producing most of the world's satellites these days, Starlink, which proposes to put 1 million satellites into the sky over the next 10 years. That one company providing the weather information and guiding farmers in what they will produce around the world. But the satellites disintegrate. And it was only a few months ago we understood that after their life cycle dies, they disintegrate into the stratosphere, that the materials created from that, the aluminum oxides created from that deflated satellite, are causing damage to the ozone layer. Significant damage that's got scientific community, climate community alarmed by what will happen to the ozone layer. Now, that's the side effect of all of that. Maybe the last message that will come out of the satellite will be to advise farmers to put on more sunscreen. But we have a real problem here. We need to really understand how vulnerable the AI system itself is, and it's going to help us solve the problems of vulnerability in the food system. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Can I give the floor to Alexandre Maybec on behalf of the HLPE? Please, Alexandre, you have the floor.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Marco. And first of all, thank you to the organizer and the task team that was behind the organization of this day, because I think we will all agree on the quality of the event and the quality of the discussion on such a complex and emerging topic. I think it's extremely impressive, the quality and the maturity of the debate we've had, considering that when we started looking for the HLP on global papers on AI and food security and nutrition in all its dimensions, there are not many of them. There is not much. There are very small things on small items, but when you try to have a global, broad perspective, it's very difficult because there is not much. And I think we had today, thanks also to the background work before and all the discussions and all your contribution to the public consultation on the paper, made really a considerable step forward in enriching and formalizing some of the things we need to think about. And I think this is very illustrative of the unique value of CFS, of its evidence-based and inclusive model. To be able to have this discussion on an emerging, because it's still emerging, and very critical issue for food security and nutrition. So that, for me, is the most important thing. The second one is that it's very clear from the discussions we had that AI already touches so many things in food systems and in the systems that have an impact on food systems that we just cannot do without looking at it. And probably we would need to look more and more about it. I think that there are also clearly elements on the need for regulatory frameworks and coordination. And so I think from the HLP's perspective, we would like to go on working on the topic, and we expect that CFS will go on convening such events or other means to go on building together this knowledge about this emerging topic, because things are going very quickly, and we need to be as quick as things are evolving if we want to be able to canalize, to influence it in the right direction. So to conclude by an offer of services, if CFS so wishes, the HLPE is ready to support such efforts in the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. It is a very ambitious target that and challenge that you are willing to serve. Now, since there were some interventions that required an answer, Sofia Monsalve has expressed her willingness to provide some comments and eventually concluding remarks for this session. So, Sofia, you have the floor. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente de esta mesa. Bueno, yo quiero constatar el silencio de la FAO y del Programa Mundial de Alimentos, principalmente del Programa Mundial de Alimentos, con respecto a la pregunta que fue levantada, y es el tema de cómo es posible que esta agencia esté colaborando con Palantir. Así que mi comentario es exhortar a las embajadoras y a los embajadores que están aquí a quizás investigar sobre este tema en los órganos de gobierno del Programa Mundial de Alimentos, porque pienso que es un tema muy serio. Lo que escuchamos también esta mañana sobre el uso de inteligencia artificial en situaciones de emergencia y crisis es muy preocupante, en el sentido que en una situación de emergencia y crisis la población es muy débil y muy frágil a medidas coercitivas, a imposición violenta. Estamos hablando de situaciones no solo de desastres naturales, sino situaciones también de conflictos armados. Entonces, aquí hay que tener un cuidado muy, muy grande, porque si estamos hablando de que estas tecnologías están siendo impuestas a la fuerza, entonces me parece que es muy claro para todas y todos nosotros que abrazamos los principios de la Carta de Naciones Unidas, no podemos permitir esto. Entonces, creo que, bueno, eso es el tema del que estamos hablando, la envergadura de lo que estamos hablando. Creo que el comentario relacionado, bueno, creo que Pat y Guru nos han mostrado, bueno, cuáles son las condiciones de la vida real en las que estamos discutiendo. El poder gigantesco que estas corporaciones tienen, el riesgo, bueno, no solamente hoy hablamos de muchos riesgos, yo quise enfatizar el tema del empobrecimiento de conocimientos, porque creo que recientemente leí que, por ejemplo, los matemáticos puros han también publicado una declaración, la declaración de Leiden sobre inteligencia artificial y matemáticas, diciendo que están muy preocupados por el empobrecimiento del conocimiento en matemáticas debido al uso de la inteligencia artificial. Entonces vemos que es un problema que no solamente tienen las campesinas y los pueblos indígenas, sino que ante las amenazas de este modelo de inteligencia artificial, La matemática pura, los investigadores en matemática pura están en una causa conjunta con los grupos de producción de alimentos en pequeña escala. Bueno, yo quiero comentar, quizás para cerrar, que ha sido muy esperanzador escuchar a representantes de gobierno, embajadoras, otros representantes de ministerios que hablaron hoy aquí, que me parece que demuestran que tienen conciencia del problema, tienen conciencia de la importancia que este tema tiene para la soberanía de sus pueblos, para la libre determinación de sus pueblos. Saben perfectamente que se trata de democratizar, el embajador de Kenia lo dijo explícitamente, democratizar la toma de decisiones y el uso de estas tecnologías. Saben de la importancia de los pequeños productores de alimentos para sus países, para la realización del derecho a la alimentación, y me parece que en este espíritu de diálogo crítico sobre temas muy difíciles pero constructivo es el camino por el que podremos avanzar. Así que muchas gracias a todas y a todos por el intercambio y el diálogo.
Muchas gracias, Sofía. I would like to give the floor to the representative of US for another intervention. If there is anyone else that wants to take the floor, please raise their hands now, because then I'm going to conclude and cede the floor to the chairperson of CFS for the final remarks. Please, Doug, you have the floor.
Thank you again for the opportunity. So I want to just encourage this, I think focusing on technical issues in the Rome-based agencies is so important to focus on the true issues that will move the needle on global food security. I would just say there's no entity, no dynamic in the world that has lifted more people out of poverty and fed more people than private sector incentives. And if we truly want to feed the world's hungry, we need to make sure we do that in a smart way, right? That doesn't mean embrace it at no cost. It doesn't embrace it without thinking through the risks. But that is the truest way to lift people out of poverty and feed the world's hungriest. And I just want to close with that comment from my perspective.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, we arrived to the end of this session. Alexandre Maybach has anticipated a little bit my conclusion, in the sense this was a very intense day where the whole Secretariat of CFS has worked behind. 6 months, I can promise, 8 months maybe, of very intense work in preparing this event of today. There were a lot of members from countries and from other stakeholders that were involved into a technical task team and that have worked hard for preparing the today exchange. All this discussion will be summarized into a conclusion that will be then proposed and presented to the next plenary in October. But I want to express my sincere gratitude for all of you, starting from the Secretariat and the people that have supported this work, from the Secretariat staff, the communication people, and all the stakeholders, the civil society, private sector, countries, RBAs, that have made this possible today. We arrived to the top of the iceberg, but as we know, an iceberg is a huge mountain of ice, and behind there was a lot of works, a lot of time spent into this, and I can promise that we have had a lot of, obviously, tension, fight, exchange, discussion about the most beneficiary strategy and the most sharp speaker to arrive to today's event. I think that we should be satisfied because this discussion proved to be successful. It is difficult when we open a discussion on a subject which is new, and we have to have the ambition to push things beyond. It's our main, this was our main objective at the beginning of this process. So I want to thank all of you, including the interpreters that, because of artificial intelligence, has one of the main challenger or competitor in the near future. But we want to thank the interpreter for the time and the passion that they have expressed today here. Thank you. And it is now my pleasure to give the floor to the chairperson of the CFS, Professor Anas Al-Nablusi. Please, Chair, you have the floor.
Thank you, Marco. Excellencies, distinguished colleagues, thank you to all speakers, moderators, and participants for the richness of today's discussions and for bringing together such a diverse range of perspectives. Today's conversation had demonstrated that AI, digitalization, and data governance are no longer emerging issues. They are rapidly becoming central determinants of food security and nutrition. One message has consistently emerged throughout the day: technology is not neutral. The outcomes it produces will depend on the choice we make today, how we govern it, who has access to it, who benefits from it, and whose voices are included in shaping its future. The discussions reinforced three critical priorities. First, ensuring equitable access to the digital transformation does not deepen existing inequalities. Secondly, establishing inclusive, transparent, and rights-based governance for AI and data, and mobilization of the resources, investments, and capacity to all countries that can participate and benefit from digital transformation, lower barriers, access, securing connectivity, and making secure that infrastructure required in its place. This is precisely where the Committee on World Food Security has unique comparative advantage. Today's forum has shown that there is both a need and appetite for CFS to provide a neutral, inclusive space where this conversation can continue, always anchored in food security and nutrition, and the progressive realization of the right to adequate food. Today's discussion provides an important foundation for future reflection within the committee and will help inform ongoing dialogue on how AI, digitalization, and data governance can contribute to food security and nutrition, support the progressive realization of the right to adequate food, and continue to building more resilient, inclusive, and sustainable food systems. In the first panel, we reflect on how the adoption of AI and digital technologies is not an objective in itself, but a means to improve food security and nutrition outcomes. These outcomes can be only achieved if digital transformation is truly inclusive. There is a need to fill the gaps of unequal access to infrastructures, digital tools, connectivity, digital literacy, financing, data access, and ownership to ensure that the benefits of AI and the new technologies are accessible to everyone. During the second panel, we discussed how data are as important as digital technologies themselves. AI systems depend on the access to high quality, representative, and responsible governed data that reflect local context and realities. AI cannot compensate fragmented and low quality of data. We need to ensure that data collection, quality, and use and the use of it in accurate and reflect local specification. This afternoon, we discussed the need for effective and inclusive governance to ensure that innovation serves the public interest, contributes to the realization of the right to food, strengthen transparency and accountability, and prevent the concentration of power and widening of existing inequalities. In rapid changing world, multilateral cooperation is critical. No country, institution, or stakeholders can address these challenges alone. The future of digital transformation in food system must be shaped collectively. Let us ensure that artificial intelligence serves farmers, citizens, consumers, human beings, not the other way around, and that digital transformation becomes a force for realizing food security, better nutrition, and right to adequate food for all. Thank you all participants, members, and constituencies who participated in person and online, And I invite all you to continue engaging with CFS in the months ahead and at the 54th plenary session in October. And thank you for all of you.
Thank you, Chair. So the meeting is officially closed, and we have a networking coffee outside, so please feel free and help yourself with a coffee. Thank you very much again. See you in October.